Well, good, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this finds you in good health. And well, today we are going to talk about a new topic that is the philosophy of artificial intelligence, right? So, today we are going to be sort of diving deep into how artificial intelligence intersects, with big philosophical questions like consciousness, intelligence, ethics, as well as free will, right? So, what is this philosophy of artificial intelligence, right? So AI, it examines how knowledge as well as understanding of key concepts like intelligence, ethics, consciousness, epistemology, and free will, how they are impacted by the rise of these machines and technologies, right? It tackles deep questions about AI's ability to think, its comparison to human intellect, and whether machines can have minds and consciousness that is similar to that of human beings, right? So, why is it that philosophers, I mean, I'm no philosopher myself, but why is it that philosophers are so interested in artificial intelligence, right? That is because, you see, it touches on fundamental issues that are related to the nature of intelligence as well as demand, right? They explore whether artificial beings or machines can truly replicate human cognition, consciousness, or ethical reasoning, right? So, and this sort of challenges traditional philosophical views on what it actually means to be a human being in today's internet-wide, software-covered global village. Now, what are some of the major questions in the philosophy of artificial intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, right? Um, so, you know, like we said before, philosophers, they see how it touches on these fundamental issues. Yeah, right. So they explore whether, it really is as deep as, it appears from a distance, right? So, they end up asking a lot of questions, right? Key questions are, for example, can a machine think like a human being, right? Another question, is there any semblance of equivalence between AI and human intelligence, right? Can machines possess mental states and consciousness that is similar to that of humans? And last but not the least, is the human brain at its core just a sophisticated computer, right? So there are some significant ideas in the philosophy of AI, right? For example, there is Alan Turing's polite convention, the idea that we can create machines as intelligent if they behave as though they are intelligent, right? Then there is the Dartmouth proposal. There is John Searle's strong AI hypothesis, right? Which is the claim that machines can, in theory, have minds as well as mental states, right? Then the physical symbol system hypothesis, right? It is the idea that a system of symbol manipulation is necessary and sufficient for general intelligence, right? Then you got the Hobbes mechanism, which basically postulates or propagates the idea that thinking is computation, right? So these frameworks, they focus on the behaviors of machines, raising the question ultimately that does it matter if a machine truly thinks like a human, or is it just enough, that it produces results which are virtually, you could say, indistinguishable from human thought per se, right? So, what are some arguments in favor of AI when it comes to achieving human-like intelligence? AI proponents, over the past few decades, they have been arguing that any attribute of intelligence, right, it can be so clearly defined that a computer can be trained to mimic it, right? So the challenge for opponents over here, I would say, fellas, is to prove that there is a fundamental limit, to machine intelligence, right? And there's something unique about the human minds that actually cannot be emulated or imitated or mocked or replicated by artificial intelligence, right? So, how actually does machine learning fit into the philosophy of AI, right? So, machine learning, starting with Turing's child machine concept, well, it allows machines to learn as well as develop intelligence without a detailed pre-designed blueprint. And this shifts the focus from formal design to a machine's ability to acquire knowledge over time. And implicit knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, in robots, for instance, right, it eliminates the need for precise, explicit programming of every action. So, how do we explain the Turing test, right? So, the Turing test that was developed by Alan Turing, right, it is a method to determine whether a machine can be considered intelligent. So, if the machine can respond to questions in a way that is indistinguishable from a human, right, it is deemed intelligent, right? So there are some critics who sort of argue over this that this test actually measures a machine's ability to mimic or recreate human behavior, but it does not really end up gauging true intelligence or I would say consciousness, right? And then we ask, how has intelligence been defined in modern AI philosophy? So, intelligence in modern AI, right, it is often framed as goal achievement. So, you had, for example, these people called Stuart Russell as well as Peter Norvig, right? And they defined it through abstract intelligent agents, right? I'm talking about systems that perceive their environment, right? And they act upon it to achieve their goals. So, even simple systems like thermostats, for example, so a thermostat can be said to have rudimentary intelligence by this definition, but this raises an issue about what truly distinguishes thinking entities from mere machines, right? So here we would like to talk. I would like to talk about Hubert Dreyfus, right? He's a well-known critic of AI. So he argues that human intelligence it cannot be captured by formal rules or computation processes, right? Because much of human expertise is actually, it is based on fast, right, intuitive judgments rather than sort of, generic, symbolic, step-by-step reasoning, right? So this echoes ideas from cognitive science, right, that emphasize the role of intuitive decision making, or what Dreyfus calls the informality of behavior, right? Then you have the Chinese room argument in relation to AI. So the Chinese room argument it challenges the idea that a machine that is manipulating symbols like a computer program, it can generally understand or have consciousness. So Searle over here is distinguishing between weak AI, machines that act as if they're intelligent, and strong AI, which claims that machines can truly possess a mind and mental states, right? So Searle argues that no matter how sophisticated symbol manipulation becomes, machines will never achieve actual understanding, right? So how do modern AI approaches differ from early AI approaches like symbol processing, right? So early AI fellows focused on symbol processing, where intelligence was all about manipulating systems logically, right? You had Alan Newell and Herbert Simon, who sort of pioneered this view, right? And they claimed that such systems are more than sufficient for intelligence. However, when we take a superficial look at today's AI, right? We see that it is shedding a paramount emphasis on statistical methods. I'm talking about neural networks. And last but not least, we also have optimization techniques. And what are these optimization techniques doing, right? Well, they're aiming to mimic the intuitive, non symbolic processes that seem to underpin much of human cognition, right? Uske baad, we ask ourselves, what did Gödel's incompleteness theorem contribute to the AI debate, right? So Gödel actually came up with an incompleteness theorem, right? Which showed that in any formal logical system, there are, statements that cannot be proven within the system itself, right? So some philosophers have used this to argue that human reasoning is too sophisticated for a Turing machine or any digital device to fully replicate, right? However, AI researchers like Stuart Russell and Peter Narvik, well, they argue that this overlooks the fact that real world reasoning, be it human or machine, right, it operates within practical limits of time as well as resources, right? So I think ultimately, this leads to the fact that this actually leads to a question, I would say, that what progress, right, has been made in AI regarding human intuition, regarding reasoning. So AI has advanced significantly in simulating intuitive reasoning, right? So, for example, neural networks and evolutionary algorithms, right? They are striving to capture intuitive learning processes. And AI systems can now produce predictions which are almost as accurate as human intuition, if not equally accurate. And research into common sense knowledge and situated action in robotics, it also aims to replicate how humans perceive as well as navigate the world intuitively, right? Over here, we also need to understand, fellows, that cognitive science has played a massive contribution towards understanding AI more effectively, right? So, cognitive science has, quintessentially speaking, aligned with critiques like Dreyfus, and it suggests that human knowledge, right, and intelligence, they often rely on fast, intuitive processes. Now, Daniel Kahneman and his colleagues, for instance, they proposed the idea of two systems for problem solving, right? So, system one for quick, intuitive judgments, and system two for slower, much more, what shall I say, methodical reasoning, right? So, AI research has increasingly focused on replicating these aspects of human cognition, right? And then you wonder ultimately that what does the problem of consciousness in AI involve, right? So the problem of consciousness in AI, well, it revolves around whether machines can have minds, mental states, or consciousness, right? So Searle's distinction between weak and strong AI, once again, it plays a strong role over here, right? And I feel philosophically this relates to the problem of other minds. The difficulty of knowing whether any being, that is machine or human, truly has subjective experiences or consciousness, right? We are often guilty of using the words responsiveness as well as consciousness interchangeably, right? So we need to understand that being responsive, well, that is sort of a it's a basic biological function, or a response to a certain stimulus. For example, the sunflower, we know it always faces the sun, right? That is a response. Consciousness is something that we are still struggling to define holistically, right? Obviously, there are some novel definitions every now and then, but I think we have yet to get the complete gist of it, right? You got subjective awareness, you got self-awareness, you got loads of cognitive complexity when it comes to consciousness, right? So, for example, there is a consciousness of this world, and then there's a consciousness of the next world, right? What happens when you're lowered into the grave, right? When those two angels of the Lord come and ask you those questions, right? Similarly, nowadays, as we see, right, like the West, right? Satan's army, the jinn, as well as their second degree human army. That is, I'm talking about the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Zionists, aliens of consciousness, international bankers, right? They are actually worshiping a force which is not Allah's origin, right? It is not the God of Moses or Abraham or Jesus or Muhammad, peace and blessings of God Almighty be upon all of them, right? So they are aiming for the secularization of the world, right? To completely strip the world of religious beliefs, right? To make man fear everything and everyone except the Lord, right? And what we see in the West, especially, is that you have a very unholy trinity being floated around, right? This unholy trinity, it comprises of atheism, materialism, empiricism, right? And empiricism is believing in what you see only, whereas faith is the exact opposite, right? It is believing in what you don't see. The fact that God exists, the fact that angels exist, the fact that demons exist, right? And as Muslims, our job is to exclude the demons and to include the angels, right? So they are part of the al-ghab, a dimension that we can't see, but that we have to be nonetheless conscious of, right? And I think that is the beauty of consciousness. That is always more to be understood when it comes to these categories. And I think in many ways, we can just summarize and say that the philosophy of AI is something that keeps on surprising us more and more each and every day. We'll be back with more discussions about the philosophy of AI, fellas. Thank you very much. Stay tuned, stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum.